Welcome to Page One, the show for writers with the reader in mind. Here's your host, Zita Christian.
Hi everybody, welcome to Page One. I'm Zita Christian. Tonight's guest is a former journalist. She was a reporter for years. She has a degree in journalism from Boston University. She's the author of 8 books. She's an editor at the site Geek Mom Online. She's a core contributor to Geek Dad on Wired.com. She's a writer for Sequential Tart, a webzine about comics and pop culture. And she's teaching an online workshop about internet publicity. And she's a friend and a fellow member of the Charter Oak Romance Writers. Please join me in welcoming Corrina Lawson. Corrina, thanks for being on the show tonight.
Thanks for asking me.
This is so good. I have a lot of things I want to talk with you about, but I thought it would be helpful for the audience to know a little about you through your writing, because most of the audience for Page One, these are writers and readers. So let's talk about the books first.
Sure.
And I thought, Dinah of Seneca, alternate history, and its sequel, Eagle of Seneca, also alternate history.
Yes.
Give me a little background about each of those.
Well, I was frustrated that I couldn't sell the other books that I had. So instead of continuing to submit, I decided to put everything aside and just write whatever came to me. And I started with a fantasy because I grew up reading Tolkien and all that stuff. And I thought, okay, how do I create a fantasy world? So I used the Romans as a template, and then I used the Vikings as a template. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool, because they never met, to have them meet? And then I thought, well, where would I put them? And so I put them in North America because I knew the topography and the geography of the setting. And so I ended up with Romans and Vikings in North America about 900 AD. And at a certain point, it just seemed to me more fun to do alternate history than actually a fantasy.
That's really taking the idea of what if to an extreme, isn't it? So tell me, from the reader's perspective, what do you think the appeal is for alternate history, and from the writer's perspective?
Well, the fun part of alternate history, I think, from a reader's perspective, and what I always loved about it, because I was actually inspired by a series of kind of humorous Roman alternate history when I was a teenager that I read in Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine. It took the usual and put them in different settings, and it made you wonder how cultures would clash and how different people would react. Especially, I think they had, that particular series of stories had Native Americans and the Roman Empire, and so that was a real clash because they had such different cultures to begin with. And so I think there's a part of getting immersed in that culture. And then the part of fun for me as a writer was that I could make it very personal. I could take a very personal character and just show the whole world and be in her head as a camera. So it was really fun to be in her head and have everything open up to her. And so as I wrote her, because it's just from one point of view, the entire book, I was able to see all these things through her eyes.
What about the research? What kind of research, or how do you do that? And do you feel compelled to stick close to the research, except obviously the fact that
I cheated a bit with the Romans. I gave them 500 extra years.
Okay.
So I upgraded their technology only to a point. They have steel factories, and they have gas lanterns, and which is not upping the Roman technology that much. I stopped short of giving them guns. I did give them gunpowder and cannons, because once you introduce guns, then you have a whole they become not sort of recognizably Roman anymore, but cannons, and you just sort of upgrade them. So I fudged a little. I gave myself a 500-year fudge factor with the Romans. The Vikings were actually pretty easy because they're contemporary to about 900 AD. So all I had to do was go online, read some books, read a little bit about their culture, and do some research. But they are pretty heavily covered culture. The hardest culture, especially for Eagle of Seneca, is the Native Americans, because they had an oral history, and their communities, especially on the East Coast, just got wiped out. And we're dealing with a time period where nobody was writing anything down about what their land looked like or what their cultures. It was all passed down. So I can only hope I did that respectfully and as well as I could with the research that was available.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned just a moment ago that the books that the manuscripts you were writing weren't selling, so you turned to something else. And I know that you've had other publishing success. I'm thinking about Freya's Gift, a novella published by Samhain, or as they say,
Salmon. Yeah, they do pronounce it
Publishing. That's available now. And Phoenix Rising. So had you already started those before you did the alternate history, or did they come after?
They actually came after. I think this year the mystery romance series I was working on will sell. I've sort of put that in the drawer because it's my baby, and I want it to be in the best home possible. Yeah. So I've always held out for big major New York publisher single title, and then when it didn't, I put it aside, and I went to work on new things to learn more about writing. And when I sat down to write a paranormal, I don't do vampires, I don't do ghosts, or I don't do werewolves. Ghosts I like, but I wasn't happy with the ghost novel I was doing, and I thought, well, you did. You love superheroes. You're a comic book geek. Write superheroes. You know them, you know how to write them.
Yeah.
And so that's when I sat down and I said, oh, this will be fun. And that's pretty much my basis. When I sit down to write something, I want it to be fun for me.
You're going to spend a lot of time with it.
I'm going to spend a lot of time on it. It better be fun.
So what's the story behind Phoenix Rising?
Well, Phoenix Rising is set up in basically current-day New Jersey, because I used to live in New Jersey and I knew the area well, so that I was able to save on research of an area. And it's about a young man who's a fire starter and a telekinetic, and he's basically been raised since age 4 to use his abilities. But he's been very isolated from society. He's been kept in this sort of secure compound, for lack of a better word. And so he's a very powerful young man. He's about 23 years old and very charismatic. But on the other hand, there's a real innocence about him, about how he approaches the world. And he was eventually paired with a military special ops team. And so supposedly they go out and they fight threats against America. But his foster father's idea is to get the special ops teams accepted as part of it, and then eventually put together a team of superheroes who are basically going to take over the world through their abilities and connections. And Alec Farley, who's the fire starter, is the first of them. And so his journey, he thinks he's a weapon is all he is. And then a woman comes in who's ostensibly a psychiatrist to help him deal with other people, because he's not afraid of his power. When he shows off, everybody kind of freaks, and he doesn't understand why. And so she's supposed to help him integrate with the rest of the world at this point.
Get some social skills.
And get some social skills and everything. And she ends up falling for him. But first she has to get him out of the environment, so she kidnaps him. And so they're on the run. He's mad at her. She is actually a latent telepath, which is why she was so interested. And she turns his fire powers off, and he turns her telepathy on through their mental interaction. And so they're on the run. They're distrustful of each other. Meanwhile, the resource is after them, and the CIA might be after them as well, because here's this weapon running around without.
So you got a lot of drama going on here.
Yeah, so they have to, of course, and so it gets a little sexy, because his fire turns them up.
So to speak.
So to speak, yes.
Okay.
So to speak.
This sounds like a wonderful book. And the tagline for it I thought was wonderful. I'll read it so I don't mess it up.
Okay.
He was born to be a weapon. For her, he must learn to be a hero.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
So I had a lot of
really
fun with
like
the
that.
climax, because the fun of having superpowers is cool. You could write about somebody who's having superpowers. So I wanted the action climax to be climactic. So they're after a nuclear bomb, and there's an explosion.
Make it big, have important, a lot at stake.
Yeah,
really good. So the whole idea of Phoenix Rising, now I should mention, that's not a paper
No, it's an
book.
ebook.
It's an ebook.
It's an ebook as yet, eventually.
Eventually paper. So if someone was looking for it when it comes out in November of 11, they would get it in the form that is read on one of those electronic readers.
Sure.
There's a number of those.
Sure, there's a
now.
number. I think Samhain has a whole bunch of formats at their website, but I think it shows up on Amazon, and it'll show up on for the Nook and all that.
Oh, good. Now, I know when we talked earlier that there was a connection between your writing of this story, your love for the story, and the comic books, and I'm thinking, well, that's the superhero.
Yeah.
But you do some work on a website that has a very strong comic book connection. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, Sequential Tart was when I first went online, and it was a bunch of women who loved comic books. Now, when I grew up, I was the only girl I knew who loved comic books. There was no internet, and I was in rural New England. And to find a group of ladies who loved comics, I was blown away. And in fact, I ended up writing for them simply because I went on their forums and I was ranting about the latest Batman plot, which I thought was really stupid, and tore it to shreds. And they came to me and said, "You should write an article for us." And so that's because I was having fun hanging out on the comic book website, and that eventually led me to a few other comic book websites. Now I moderate the forums for Gail Simone, who used to write Wonder Woman, and now she's writing Batgirl for DC.
Oh, how things are connected.
Yeah. So it all connects together.
It's destiny is a wide road.
Yes,
exactly.
Exactly.
One of the questions that I'm often asked when I talk to people in the public, they want to know, it's such a very basic question for writers, but the not so much where you get your ideas, but the how-to process. You're a mom,
yes.
and you have children.
4 kids.
Four kids. So
4 kids.
How do you fit the writing in? What kind of schedule do you keep?
Well, the school year and the summer are completely different, but the school year, get them all at the door. At one point, I had 4 kids taking 4 different buses to 4 different schools, because one of my kids has special needs. So, and one of them went to a magnet school, and so, and 2 of them were in the local school district. So I get on a routine, and then hopefully most mornings I make it to the Y, and then I would come back. I would have a very set schedule for each day. I do an hour writing first, and then I move on to the other stuff, and then hopefully I'd have a little time back. I find that I ended up doing a lot of writing at night. I'm a night owl, so at 10 o'clock everybody was asleep, and so I was wide awake. Whether I get up at 6 o'clock or not, I'm wide awake at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
So, but it's important to have a schedule and know what you're doing each day.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And it can change.
Yeah, you need to kind of go with that flow. Do you have projects that are sort of on the back burner that you'll think, oh, I'll get to that a couple months from now or a year from now?
I usually, before I got published, I said I want to write 2 books a year. I was trying to put myself on, so I would give myself deadlines, and so that was always a thing I kept in mind. Now I sort of have prioritized rather than being long term, because I have to write blog posts for Geek Dad, and I have to do editing work for Geek Mom, and so those are daily things. And so the long-term stuff is harder.
I can imagine, yeah, because there's the immediate it requires immediate
attention. But I usually always have a writing project.
Well, let's jump in and talk about Geek Dad and Geek Mom. And what are they, and how did it come about that you're writing for them?
Well, it's connections again.
Yep.
Somebody posted on the Sequential Tart website that this blog called Geek Dad, which is on Wired.com, which is a pretty big website.
And let me just show the magazine here.
Yeah, the magazine is under separate management, but yes, it's the same overall company. In fact, when I got my first check, it came from Condé Nast, which was really cool.
Oh my! So listen, well, here we are. There, we'll pick that up right here.
That was one of the coolest things, to get a check from Condé, especially if you're a journalist and all of a sudden a check from Condé Nast shows up in your mailbox.
Absolutely.
That was really cool.
So Geek Dad is affiliated with
Wired.com.
And then the magazine has an affiliation as well.
Yes.
So Geek Dad. So go back to that one.
Sequential Tart. Somebody said this website on Wired is looking for writers, and I went and I looked at that, and I thought, oh my God, this website is fabulous. I want to write for them. I spent 4 hours one morning, because they asked to make it like a blog post, like, this is why I'm a geek and this is why you should hire me. 4 hours, and I have a horrible typo habit. I never see them. And so I had to go back, and I had to go back, and I had to go back, because I was really nervous. And I sent it off, and I could tell I really, really wanted it, because I was sweating when I hit send. And then I put it out of my mind and went back to whatever else I was doing that day. And apparently they got over 200 submissions, and they picked 30 people. And so I was picked, and I was horribly nervous. And my first few posts, I didn't get any feedback, because sometimes I like working for men, because if they have something to say, they just come right out and say it. But if they don't have anything to say, you don't hear from them. And so for about a month and a half, I'm writing posts, and I think they're pretty good, but I get no feedback, really.
How often are you writing the posts?
Oh, once a week.
Once a week, okay.
Once a week.
And you're not hearing anything,
No,
but they're taking them.
They're taking them, and they're getting published, and I'm getting, comments and things. And then they asked me to be a core contributor, which is their paid group of writers. And so I did that for a year, and it's not a huge amount of money. It started out small. It's gotten to be a little bit better then, but journalists aren't making a lot of money now. But there was a big demand for geek moms, and there were 4 of us moms writing for Geek Dad. So we put together an independent website. One of us is a web designer. A couple of others have journalism experience, and so we each brought something to the table, and we gathered up a whole bunch of writers, and so we have about 50 writers right now.
My gosh.
Working. And we've only been able to pay them a very small amount so far. But I figure we're ahead of the Huffington Post, who didn't pay a lot of their bloggers. But that's our goal right now, to put them on a small but steady income.
Corrina, that's wonderful.
So,
that's
and
wonderful.
we're getting up to about 200,000 hits per month.
Oh my gosh.
So.
And all of this because you're following something you love to do.
Yes.
You associated yourself with something that
Yes.
That is part of your own passion.
It wasn't part of me trying to put myself out there. It wasn't part of me, saying, oh, God, this would be good for my career. It was just like, I want to do this. This would be great. And it was because I was hanging out on a website that had similar interests to mine.
So you mentioned just a minute ago that you referred to yourself as a geek. And is that a fair statement, that you define yourself?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I
So
mean, it's
Corrina
sports
Lawson,
and
geek.
Well, I came up with a tagline because I was putting my new website, which is Writer, Mom, Geek, and Superhero.
Writer, mom, geek, and superhero.
Yes.
Oh, I like that. Okay,
Yes.
I like that. That's very good. You need to know your identity.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk with you about a lot tonight is this new workshop that you're teaching, all about internet publicity. It has a very cool title. Could you tell us?
Sure. It says how. Sometimes I put it backwards. So, how screwing around on the internet can lead to fame and fortune, sort of.
Yeah.
So
the sort of part.
The sort of is a modifier because, 1, I can't guarantee anyone success.
Sure.
And 2, because sort of means in your own specific field of interest, you can become a larger name if you stay where you're having fun and you're articulate about it. I think one of the women taking a workshop, she's very into thoroughbred racing. And she's already finding that the more articulate and, her blog is drawing comments, and her name is getting known in that particular world. So that's why screwing around means having fun. And if you have fun, it will eventually lead you to the projects that you're interested in, which will lead to good things and getting your name out there in the particular field that you're interested in being in.
Which is what you would want. I mean, I know that sounds simplistic, but I hear writers, not so much anymore, but sometimes there would be new writers saying, I don't like to write this, but I know it's what's selling, so that's what I'm going to write. And I think, but if it sells, if it does, the publisher is going to want more of that. And if that's not something, whatever that is, that you enjoy reading and writing, you're not going to be happy. Why would you do that?
I had actually, the very first germ of an idea I had that I wanted to write something with history in it, I had friends who were at Regencies, and they were selling Regencies, and Regencies were hot. And I thought, let me see if I can sell a Regency. And then the guy started out with a sword, and I got bored with a sword, and it turned into an axe, and he turned into a Viking. And so obviously I'm not meant to write Regencies or categories, which I think people who write them are fabulous. But I think you have to love them, and they do love writing them, and my brain doesn't go there.
Yeah, you have to know, you have to know what is important in your mind, what you could get immersed in and stay with for a long time.
The only guarantee I think you ever have as a writer is pleasing yourself as you write. You can't guarantee that it's going to sell. You can't guarantee it's going to sell well. You can't guarantee even that it's going to turn out well. But you can guarantee that while you're doing it, you're having a good time.
That's very, very important. So let me get back to this workshop a minute, because there's an assumption here that, let's say that I've written a book and now, and it's been published by a publishing house, or perhaps I have self-published.
Sure.
But the idea is that I need to do something on the internet. And the first thing I think of, and maybe this again is simplistic, but for some people who are just jumping into that world of internet promotion and publicity, why is it so important?
Well, it's important because if you're self-published, publishers used to do all the marketing for you. Not all of it, but a decent amount. And if you sold to a big publisher, but this is before e-publishing came along and became a success, you could be pretty much, even if you sold to a small press, that you would get guaranteed 10,000 books to be out there in bookstores. That's still a big number in e-publishing sales, 10,000. Even at Sam Hine and some of the bigger e-publishers, they do hit six figures sometimes. But, 10,000 is a lot of books to sell. And if you sold to a major publisher, you were pretty much guaranteed the 10,000 sales, and you were guaranteed a publisher marketing department behind you, and your book would be in stores, which would mean your book would be where readers would find it.
Yeah.
Now,
Not that way.
People can write a fabulous book. If you don't have a platform for people to find out about your book, then it can be wonderful, and they'll never hear about your book or know about your book, which is why I think it's a mistake to be on the internet after you write the book. Be on the internet screwing around before you write your book.
Oh, teasing it, talking about yourself?
No.
In what
Doing
way?
what you love. Hanging out with the people you like to hang out with on the internet. The very first writing group I ever found was because I was talking books that I loved with people, and they said, you should come here. And I said, well, I haven't read that author's books. And they said, that's all right, she doesn't care. She loves to talk writing. And it ended up being New York Times bestselling author Jennifer Cruzy's.
Oh, of course.
So, and then for a year, she taught us writing. And so now there's this very supportive group of other writers on the internet that I knew.
Wonderful.
And so when I got published, they were all excited and happy, and
Yeah, you build your community first.
You build your community as you go. I think the mistake a lot of writers make is, okay, I've written a book, now how do I sell it? That shouldn't be. It should be, how do I get who I am out there? How do I be who I am out there?
That's that same idea. I've heard it said, if you hang out with the wrong people, the right people can't find you.
Yes.
So you really do need to go to those websites and those writing groups where you share an interest.
Well, yeah, RWA is great, the Romance Writers of America, but it's even more than that. I mean, when I started hanging out in comic book websites, I never intended to sell them my books. This is before I had even thought of writing a superhero story. It's just because what I was interested in. It's almost easier to integrate what you're interested in. Say you're a knitter. You think, I could write about, integrate knitting or quilts into the story, because, boy, it would be fun to write about them. And then these people I hang out with might be interested in hearing about the book.
Yeah.
And so you're a member of the community. There are a couple of shortcuts I've heard. One is the Goodreads site, which isn't about building communities, but that you can do print book giveaways. And they will basically, a few clicks, and you can set up a giveaway. And you can get several hundred people, because who doesn't want free books? And
Sure.
Goodreads is where the readers are. So a whole bunch of people will at least look at your book.
Well, Corrina, where are you teaching this class, and how does somebody take it?
Well, I'm teaching it over for the Charter Oak Romance Writers. It's an
Okay.
online workshop, and we're doing it through a Yahoo group, which is basically a discussion group.
Does a person have to be a member
No.
of Charter Oak Romance Writers?
No, we have a couple of people, one of whom isn't even a romance writer. She's a nonfiction writer.
Okay. And is the workshop, is it interactive, or is it something that you teach and then that can be archived? Will you rerun the workshop at some point?
Probably I'm going to look through. This is my first time teaching it online. I used to do a workshop on internet communities, because that was my thing. I can't tell you how to set up a website, but I can tell you how internet communities run, how to recognize good ones, how to recognize bad ones, because I not only ended up with the Cherries, I moderated the group, and then I ended up moderating Gail Simone's forum, which taught me a little bit more about how people interact. So I knew that. So I used to teach it as internet communities, and there's an article up on my website on internet communities. So if you Google me in internet communities, you'll find the article that I wrote.
Okay.
But this is a little more interactive. This is more teaching people. Basically, I came up with 13 rules and I sent them out to them. But it's more of, what do you want from the internet? And how do we get you there? And a lot of it is it's sort of throwing away the brainwashing of, oh, your book is out. You have to do a guest blog every day for 3 months. Or your book is out, you should do X, or you should do this, or you should post your excerpts here, or you must do giveaways, or you must do this. And no, I don't think there's any must or should or anything like that, because when it comes to internet publicity, nobody knows nothing. Like William Goldman said, nobody knows what works or makes things take off. And you never know what connections are going to be the most beneficial to you, which is why you just have to make an effort to hang out with the right people.
So that you're enjoying the process along the way.
Exactly.
And so that, I think, it answers certainly a portion of my next question, like, what are the mistakes? What are some of the most common mistakes that writers make?
I think the only 2 things you really need to do, and this is the most common mistake, I think, is don't forget to keep writing.
Yeah.
Don't forget to, because I remember when my first novella came out, Phrase Gift, which actually came out a couple of months before the book came out, even though I sold it after, I was like, oh my God, my book is out, I have to, and you run into panic. And so I did a lot of guest blogs, and I didn't write for 2 months because it was all so overwhelming. And then it took me another 1.5 years to sell a book. If you don't have product, you can't sell anything.
Yeah.
So the first mistake is do not, take a couple-week break or something, but don't get out of the habit of writing. Mm-hmm. And the second thing you must do is have a website where people can find you and find your books. That's it. Those are the only
two biggies.
Those are the mistake people make, is they get caught up in doing something because they think they should, and they come off as insincere. And you never. The big rule of the internet is it's all interaction, and it's got to all be who you are.
The word has that implication, doesn't it?
You got to be prepared to talk with people, and you got to be prepared to, respond as professionally as you can, and you got to be prepared to, interact. A lot of big corporations make this mistake. I just got all nasty with DC Comics on Geek Dad because their Twitter
I think
wrong.
I think, Corrina, that there's a wide open space here for discussion.
Yes.
And I have to say thanks very much for coming here
Sure.
to share this information with everyone. And we'll be looking for the workshop, and for other news, we'll go to the website and get the other information we need to do what we need to do on the internet.
Okay.
And also, let me just say a thank you to you in the audience. I'll close with the words of the fantasy writer Ursula Le Guin, who said, "There have been civilizations that did not use the wheel, but there have been no civilizations that did not tell stories. So find your story and find a way to tell it. But do join us again next time. Thank you."
Food for the crew and guests was provided by Manchester Grill of Manchester, Connecticut, and Angelo's Restaurant of Glastonbury, Connecticut. Be sure to send your writing questions and your comments on the book club selection to Zita at page 1, P.O. Box 1515, Manchester, Connecticut, 06045-1515, or send an email to Zita at page1tv.com.